more the Klay Thompson. I stay out of everything. I don't. I just want to be on my boat, hang out with women, and do my thing.
You know what? I think that you and Klay Thompson would genuinely get along as human beings. Like I could see you and Klay ending up forming a sincere friendship and a bond, and you just being the guy who like drives his boat for him.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. I would love that job. We're both not married.
Yeah.
We both don't have kids.
You're gonna end up being at some point Zachariah, Silver and Zach, gonna be like the boat driver / cell phone charger / just like the guy who does all the random things.
Gets his groceries, make sure that his girls don't run into each other.
You can't be the grocery guy, okay? Because you are a charlatan when it comes to food.
I can read a grocery list though.
Okay.
I might not know what to do with it after I get them, but I know how to read it.
If
Anyways,
it was left up to
Thompson,
you.
Zachariah on Twitter. He's at Real OC Sports. I'm at Zach Sports, ZAK Sports. All right, OC. I'm going to be the negative Nancy. I need you to be the positive Pete. Raiders get their first win at home against the Denver Broncos. Your initial thoughts before we get into the micro. Give me your macro, big guy.
Well, look. We started this podcast talking about, hey, where are the Raiders in the division? What are they talking about with the Raiders and how they stand relative to their divisional foes? And obviously, things at the quarter way through the season, it's not working out exactly how everyone prognosticated that it would. But one of the most important developments here is that the Denver Broncos stink out loud. They are terrible. They are awful in so many different ways. Poorly coached. Russell Wilson is being exposed. Apparently, his team is not really fond of certain aspects of his personality. All of that disarray. Now they've lost their starting left tackle to a broken leg. All of that translates to the Raiders not being bottom dwellers in their own division. And does that mean you're a playoff team? No. Does that mean that there's overwhelming positivity for you? No. But it's always best to be looking down at somebody, and it's especially great for Raider fans to be looking down at the Denver Broncos, who, of course, you beat head-to-head for the first and only so far win of the season. We saw some of the things that I've been asking to see. You get Devontae Adams over a 100-yard game. There's a lot of positives to take away, and because we took so long to record the podcast this week, we get to put an extra stamp on the fact that Denver lost again. Good news for the Raiders ×2.
Yeah, you kind of stole my thunder. My being negative Nancy was going to say just watching last night's game and the fact that, we're going to get to do a little bit of a recap of last week and also a preview of this week, and hopefully Raiders fans can get it before the game starts. But watching whatever that was last night, which, by the way, I don't think I've ever seen fans, the Bronco fans, first of all, okay. Let me say this about the Broncos fans. They have a high standard. Like in other cities where I guess they're not used to, John Elway winning 2, Manning get him in another one. Maybe their standards are really high, but these people boo in like the first quarter when it's tied at 0. They were booing when they were up 3-0. Like their standards are, most fans, it takes a lot. Like you have to be down 40-0 before they'll bust out like the garbage bags. No, these fans they're like, I want filet mignon. And the fact that they left, OC, I don't think I've ever seen a home fan base leave going into overtime. They were just like, the game's totally up in the balance, but I've had enough of whatever I'm watching. I'm out ski. I'm going to beat I've never seen a home fan base leave going into overtime.
Well, you've also never seen a home fan base suffering through a clearly, well, I shouldn't say you've never seen this because you do live in the Bay and you've seen a lot of iterations of Raider football. We haven't seen a fan base in this, what have you done for me right now kind of mentality that we all exist in 2022, who's got a head coach who clearly doesn't know what he's doing. Like, doesn't know when to call timeouts, doesn't know how to call timeouts, doesn't know whose ball to put in, whose hands to put the ball in when the game's on the line, doesn't know how to call plays, doesn't know how to manage personnel, right? There's frustration coming into a game. And even if the other team stinks worse than you stink, it doesn't mean you have to be proud of where your team is at right now. So these Raider fans, these Bronco fans, are looking at drives of like 16 yards and a punt, 9 yards and a punt, 24 yards and a punt, 27 yards and a field goal. This is not what they want. This is not what any NFL fan base wants. And when both teams in a Thursday night football game are looking that bad, they are justified. You pay a lot of money to go to an NFL football game, right? That's part of the fan experience. You get to voice your displeasure. Does it mean anything to the coaches and the players? No. Should it? No. But that's part of the fan experience. You paid $400 for a ticket for yourself, for your significant other, a souvenir, and a beer, and now you're watching some of the worst football. You could go watch tonight in your local burg, suburb, neighborhood. You can go watch high school football that is more cleanly executed than what you saw in that Thursday night football game. So every right to boo.
I mean, I guess trying to make the cross reference to, let's say, a baseball game and the score was 0-0 and we were going into the 10th inning. I mean, part of you could say, yeah, the offense stinks, but the defense has been great. You could celebrate that. I'm more just talking about time and score. If they were down 30-3, of course I could see all the fans leaving. But we're talking about going into overtime. Your team still has a chance to win. By the way, your team's at 500, was over 500 the week before, but they're 2-2, and you're playing this game, and I just can't imagine ever leaving in like an overtime game in basketball, even if the score was 62-62.
People
but
had to work,
the Warriors
man.
are going into OT. Even if I was disgusted in the offense, I just can't wrap my head around fans leaving a game that they paid all the money that you just said for when it's going into overtime, what some people argue is the most exciting thing in sports.
Okay, so you're telling me that if you have a job to go to on Friday morning and you're at a basketball game, we're going to call it a basketball game or a baseball game, you're going to stay for overtime, you're going to stay the extra hour, whatever, to watch the final conclusion of that terrible game that you've already been at for 3 hours. You're going to watch the final conclusion, even if there's not a run scored in baseball, even if no one's hit a three-pointer in that entire basketball game. Like, there were no touchdowns scored in this game between both teams.
By the way, I never bet, but I bet the under because they're averaging like 12 points a game. I bet maybe 5 times a year, OC. I'm not a degenerate. But they average like 15 points a game, and the over-under was at like 44. I was like, give me the under. The guy that I do my bets to was like, dude, you said the under, and they haven't scored a touchdown. And in overtime, they didn't score a touchdown either. That was like the easiest bet
21
ever.
Points total in this game.
That's crazy.
We can criticize a lot of people involved in the debacle that was Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime. Fans are not one of those people. Fans,
yeah.
Boo as much as you want. When that is what you see, that's the product you're getting. People were sitting at home booing their TVs. They didn't have to pay.
I know, but you know the phrase, you'd rather win ugly than lose pretty. You know what I mean? Like, I guess ultimately, if you're a fan and you're going to the game, yes, you want to see a good product, but the number one reason why you're there is to root for the home team. That's why it's in the song that they play in the 7th inning in baseball. So I just put it like this. If it was me and I was a diehard Broncos fan, yes, I would want to throw up in my mouth for what I was seeing from the offense and the fact that we paid Russell Wilson a boatload of money and he looks like hammered dog, you know what? But at the same time, all I really care about is my Broncos winning, so I'd stick around to see if they won. But let's just leave it there, because the reason why we're going on and on about this is that it kind of dilutes the Raiders win for me, because 23 points and 2 touchdowns from the Broncos makes me question the Raiders defense. He went 17 of 25, 237, no picks. I mean, I'm kidding. Obviously, if you hold a team to 23, you did a good job, and last night was an anomaly. But it just kind of took away from it a little bit based on how much garbage we saw last night.
Well, your expectations, and this you started the Broncos conversation with expectations, right? That fan base was spoiled for years because you had John Elway, one of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. And then they had Peyton Manning for a time, one of the top 3 quarterbacks of all time or 4 quarterbacks of all time, right? And you thought that you were getting something like that, something that would at least approach that standard when you paid $250 million for Russell Wilson, who happens to be the weirdest, corniest guy in the NFL. And you put up with that weird stuff and the odd manner of speaking and the strange catchphrases and all the cringy antics that you get on the All Access on NFL Films if he's producing and if he's winning. Fans now are too educated, right? And Raider fans are just as educated as anyone else, and the expectation needs to be lower. And for most people is. For you, you've got this like silver and black pair of goggles on where you're just like, I think that 32-point performance is who this Raider team really is. And we can do that against Kansas City. And you can do that against Houston and New Orleans. And you know what? Jacksonville looks better this year, but you're going to whomp them too. And the next time you go on the road to Denver, you're going to put up 40 points on them. Like, your expectations, and I hate having to hammer this point home over and over for you, but like the way that this Raider roster is constructed means that performances like that one, you should celebrate them because they are going to be the outlier and the anomaly.
Yeah, but I think, first of all, Denver's defense is stout. So the fact that the Raiders put up 32 is impressive. I mean, you saw how they stifled the Colts last night. And yes, the Chiefs game, even though they beat Tampa, was a blowout. And look, I'm not saying the Raiders are going to win all these games, but what them putting up 32 on Denver's defense is what they're capable of doing. But if I told you, OC, that Derek Carr threw for 188 yards with 5.5 yards per completion and no touchdowns, you would have said that they would have what on Sunday?
Lost. That's it. Those are losing numbers in most cases, right? But then you don't judge the game on its parts, right? You take the whole game. And if you told me that this Raider team had 5 yards per pass completion, but also more than 5 yards per run, I'd say, okay, maybe they had a chance to win, right? If you told me that they passed for less than 200 yards, but they ran for over 200 yards, I'd say, okay, maybe so before I see that final score, maybe this team had a chance to win. If you tell me they were able to do those things, and then I'd be getting into, well, what about turnovers? Did the defense create some pressures? Was there sacks in this game? Now we're talking about a situation in which, I maybe think that the numbers you're telling me translated to a Raider win. And if you tell me that it's against the Broncos offense that has been subpar at best, I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe that 400 yards of total offense in a game, regardless of how it came, was good enough for the Raiders to win. And you got to judge the whole performance. So credit to an offensive line group that we've been trashing on. Credit to Jacobs and the rest of the people who got touches in the run game for making it happen on the ground. Credit to Derek Carr for being selective with his own runs, right? But this is a Broncos team that, yes, is better defensively than they are offensively. They're not good. So celebrate this win, but don't make it change your expectations.
Well, I think it's crazy because people have been talking about the Broncos for, it feels like, at least a couple of years, saying that the only thing that they're missing is a quarterback. And they come in and somehow their offense is worse than whatever QBs that they were trotting out. I can't believe they have 2 wins. San Francisco, if that loss ends up costing them something, they're going to kick the crap out of themselves. But yeah, I mean, that's the other thing I was going to say. If I told you, OC, that the O-line was dominant and Jacobs ran for $144 and they ran for more yards than they passed for, I would also tell you that was a loss. Well, not the first part. If I just told you that they ran for more yards than they passed for, I would have told you that they lost because we have been lamenting the offensive line. But Carr also, he ran 7 times for 40 yards. It wasn't the yardage. It wasn't like Lamar Jackson stuff, but I think he got either 4 or 5 first downs off of his rushes. Like when he ran for a purpose, for a first down, ultimately. And if he can keep doing that and they can have the balance and the defense can play the way that they did. I know we kind of ripped into Chandler Jones, and he didn't really show up in the stat sheet, but he drew a lot of holding penalties. And I mean, if you're a Raider fan, if I was a Raider fan and I had a son that was a Raiders fan, I'm getting a Max Crosby jersey. That guy is by far my favorite Raider. It's not even close. That guy is a menace. And looking back on the contract that they gave him, the Raiders are going to feel like he's probably going to hold out. That guy is dominant.
No, he's absolutely a great player. And you'd be justified in purchasing the jersey, right? His havoc rate now, if you're into the havoc plays and that stat, his havoc rate is among the best for edge rushers in the NFL. And, dude, the guy's 25 years old. So if you handle this right, you've got a guy who could be a cornerstone for your franchise for at least another 5 years.
Now, just watching the game in general, it feels like I know Devontae was over 100. I don't, but it seemed like every passing yard was okay. I'm looking now. Derek Carr threw for $188 and Devontae had $101. So it felt like he had every receiving yard. I think they're obviously missing who's my guy in the slot?
Renfro.
Yeah, I think they're obviously missing Renfro in terms of having.
Don't call him your guy. You're a hater.
Hey, any white wide receiver is my guy, okay? Anyways, Darren Waller, not another big day. I don't know if he wants more money because he kind of signed a cheap tight end deal, or if there's something going on there, or if it was just the way that the game was flowing. I guess I'm asking you, do you think that the Raiders are going to treat each game individual to how it's going? Or do you think that based on this game, they're going to start focusing on the run more? Because apparently if they give it to Josh Jacobs more than 24 times or something, they're like 9-1 or something like that. So do you think they're going to focus on the run more, even with Devontae Adams?
Well, I think that's going to be predicated on the looks that they get from opposing defenses, right? I think that Devontae Adams having some more success, even though it sucks for him and for the Raiders and for Derek Carr, that Waller is not stepping up in the absence of Renfro, and that Renfro is out, right? It's never an ideal situation where you have to rely on one particular talent to get you 60% of your offensive output in one game. I should say your pass receiving output in one game. But they should stay committed to balancing this offense. Now, it was imbalanced in that in today's NFL, being 60-40 for the run is actually really favoring the run, right? Because in today's NFL, it's like even a balanced offense is more 60 pass, 40 run. So, so this is, probably a little outsized for what the Raiders are going to want to do. If you can get 200 yards a game on the ground, beautiful. But if that comes at the expense of your passing attack, it's probably not going to translate to wins all that often. I think hopefully this performance from Jacobs and from the offensive line will tell the coaching staff, we can do this more. We can commit to this more. And hopefully when Renfro comes back, they'll be able to balance it out and get him some touches as well without sacrificing too much of that production on the ground.
Now, moving forward, I think I already know the answer to this question. But all right, before I get to that, I'll do that after this one. Do you think that there's a lot of this I hate to put everything on McDaniels, but do you think there's a lot of this of all of them learning a new system and trying to get used to each other and what they're doing? Or do you think a lot of that should have been worked out in the offseason and that has nothing to do with it? Because it feels like they're almost trying to get used to what he's doing in like live game situations and with no preseason and stuff like that. I don't know. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
I don't, because everybody in the league goes through some type of coaching change in an offseason, right? If not always a head coach, obviously, but there's coordinators moving all the time. Position coaches are moving all the time. Personnel is shifting back and forth in the NFL frequently, constantly, all the time. And the ebbs and flows are a natural part of the game. But if you're sitting here going into week 5 and saying, we still got to get used to each other. We still got to take some time and figure out kind of the rhythm of his offense, and maybe we got a quarter of the playbook yet to be installed. That means somebody's doing their job wrong. You don't get a pass at this level making that kind of money, coaches, quarterbacks, everyone, if you're looking around and saying, guys, be patient with us. Give me 6 weeks before you really judge us, when everybody else in the league is doing it the way that they're supposed to be. Not everyone else in the league, obviously, but where plenty of teams in the league and even some in your own division are doing it the way they're supposed to be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really subscribe to that theory. I just, you hear that from talking heads, like, now they're finally starting to. I'm like, why wouldn't you get that when you were running all the drills in camp, going over plays and film study, and when you had scrimmages and one-on-ones and stuff? Like, it feels like you shouldn't need the regular season to figure it out, so to speak.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Anyways, well, we'll see. I mean, maybe it is a turning point. They certainly needed the W, but next week, Sean, or I should say in a couple days, at Arrowhead, Sunday Night Football. This is the one where I think I already know what your answer is going to be. But is there a puncher's chance in hell?
There's always a puncher's chance. This is the National Football League. The other guys get paid too, right? That's even when you're talking about a stacked team, even when you're talking about, Patrick Mahomes, who's arguably the best quarterback in the game right now and one of the best improvisational quarterbacks that we've seen in the last generation or so.
That play was silly. Against the Bucs.
Well, it is silly because the dude
it was like he was playing basketball and football mixed into one sport. He didn't even pass it. He flicked it.
That's right. It was like
a finger roll.
That's what it was. He's like George Gervin out there.
Yeah. It was the Iceman out there on the football field.
Look, this is a Kansas City offense that's tied for 4th in the league in its overall output. It's a defense that, if you could put up 400 yards on the Broncos, right? Why can't you do it on the Kansas City Chiefs? They give up 90 yards a game on average, more than the Broncos do, right? But you've got to get a strong performance out of your offensive line first and foremost, because Kansas City has that big brother mentality right now with the Raiders. They're going to bring pressure. They're going to try and get in Carr's face. They're going to make him make the plays to beat you because they don't believe that he's that guy. They look on their own sideline and say, we have that guy. You Raiders do not have that guy. We've got him. So send the house at us, because our play callers and our quarterback will adjust to what you're doing, and we'll find ways to gash you. Go ahead. Bring all the pressure. We'll set up a nice little tunnel screen. We'll take it to the crib. Like, the Raiders need to have a strong performance out of their offensive line. And I know how boring a response like that gets, trust me, but you cannot win this game if you don't have a game from them, from that unit, like you did when they played the Broncos.
Yeah, I think just looking at this game, why did Patrick Mahomes lose the Super Bowl? Because he had no offensive line. He had nowhere to go. I remember reading a stat that he ran more yards side to side than he did forwards or whatever. He was running for his life in that game, and he had no shot. So if Chandler Jones can be worth the signing, and Crosby can get after him on the left and the right side, and make it difficult.
All you need from Chandler Jones, all right, I'm telling you, I have to be the Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder that tells you where to adjust your expectations. All you need from Chandler Jones is for him to be good enough to chase somebody into Max Crosby. He's not getting home this year. Chandler Jones is not being the hero.
He drew a lot of holding penalties last week, OC. He drew a lot of holding penalties.
Okay.
That can be just as effective as a sack.
No, it can't be just as effective as a sack.
All right. Well, yeah, because you don't lose it down, but it's just as, it's good in terms of yardage.
You don't lose it down. You can't force a turnover. It doesn't energize the sideline in the same way.
But he can't do anything if he's being held.
You're right. Okay, so good for him to find ways to help the cause.
I think he's going to have a big day.
Okay, I hope he does.
Yeah.
But going into a game like this and saying, we can win if we get a big day out of Chandler Jones, when in 2022 you have yet to get a big day out of Chandler Jones, is, I think, a flawed approach.
Okay. Well, obviously you're going to have to see stuff out of Nichols and Billings as well, but I think I think that there is no recipe to defeat Patrick Mahomes. There is a way to slow him down, and that's if the defensive line is getting after him and making him run around, and then that helps out the secondary and everybody else. So in order for them to have a chance in this game, because look, you're going to call me, whatever, Raiders colored glasses or whatever, but if they win this game and go to 2-3, looking at the schedule, as they say, they could run off 7 straight. Texans, Saints, Jaguars, Colts, Broncos, Seahawks. Sorry, 6 in a row. But then who knows how Herbert's going to be? That could be 7. Rams look struggling. That could be 8. Patriots suck this year. 9. Steelers, 10. Niners, Chiefs, probably not. But I'm saying you could be looking at 12 wins if everything falls right.
Well, let's start with a win on Sunday against the Chiefs. All right.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to you go look at the tape, and the offensive line looked like a completely different group. Okay. The Denver Broncos are the leading sack defense in the country, in the NFL, right? They got 19 sacks this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Raiders only gave up 2 to them.
Okay.
And I get when you say only gave up 2 sacks, that's not it's never ideal to have your quarterback peeled up off the turf, especially given what we've seen in a couple of weeks with your Dolphins. But if the offensive line can have that level of protection and keep Carr out of trouble and away from duress, you can actually rely on him to try and duel Patrick Mahomes a little bit. If you're putting Derek Carr at a deficit to where he's getting hit all the time, he's on the run, and he's not quite as mobile, obviously. He's on the run, and he's a guy who's got to make these off-schedule plays that we see all the time from Patrick Mahomes. If the game has to look like that on both sides, you're not going to win. If you can let Derek Carr stay safe in the pocket and play his game, you have a chance for your quarterback to have a strong day against one of the strongest quarterbacks in the NFL. If Derek Carr is put at a deficit by the performance of his offensive line, then Patrick Mahomes will be running. He'll be Usain Bolt. He'll be running away, looking back like, look at my production. Derek, what are you doing back there, man? Look what I'm doing today. I'm on SportsCenter 6 times. What are you doing? Right? You have to protect Derek Carr and make it an easy day for him, because Patrick Mahomes, he can win without an easy day. But when you're dueling against a guy like that, you need support.
Well, I'll be watching the D line for sure. All right, let's move on to around the NFL. I was going to say keep it in the Bay Area. I have to remind myself that the Raiders are in Vegas. So let's move to the Bay Area. Talk a little Niners, Panthers. Number 1, let's look back at last week, OC. Jimmy G, porn star Jimmy, as Stephen A. Smith likes to call him. Jimmy G with that W over the Rams. That was all about Jimmy G. Yeah, the defense did okay, but Jimmy G was the one that won that game for the Niners. I'm totally kidding. The Niners defense is ridiculous, but Jimmy G did enough to win, and they beat the Rams in a much-needed win.
Okay, so this is what I've been telling you Jimmy G's ceiling is for a couple of years. And you always tell me that he's good to great, borderline great. This is what the kind of team that Jimmy G can win on. This is the kind of team that Jimmy G has won on as part of, right? Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy who at his best doesn't screw up and allows you to execute in an offense. He'll make 3 throws a game that move the sticks. The rest of the time, he's just handing the ball off. He's dinking and dunking down the field. He doesn't turn the ball over in his best performances. And then you rely on your run game, and you rely primarily for the Niners on your defense to deliver the promised land, right? I mean, Jimmy G's best pass play of this game was Deebo Samuel making the entire defense miss. That's Jimmy G. That's what this guy is. That's why he's a backup in the NFL now.
A large percentage of his passing yards were runs after the yards after the catch. But that's the way Shanahan scripts it up. What else can he do?
No, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. What else can he do? Because he knows what Jimmy G's capable of. So
He's
like,
capable of it. If he would let Jimmy G cook, you know what I'm saying? His numbers would be far better. Now, that game was all about the defense. The Niners defense missing multiple starters, by the way, on defense, and are still that dominant is ridiculous. Did you see that the Niners submitted cuts up of all the times that Bosa's been held and hasn't been called?
dude,
Because they want him to send it to the referees so that they're more aware of it.
Bosa with his ugly ass helmet right now is first in sacks, first in pressures. He's first in holding penalties drawn. The dude, and that's with all those that they're not calling against him.
Yeah.
The dude is a menace. He is a game wrecker. He's the kind of guy, the NFL gradually has increased the salaries and increased kind of the price per sack in contracts for pass rushers for defensive ends because of guys like him. Because they've finally figured out in the NFL that if you have a guy like that on one side of your defensive line, and maybe you're lucky enough to have two guys like that, or a guy like that and a guy who's 3/4 of that, they've figured out that's worth about $2 million per sack. That's how disruptive that person is. Yeah. This contract that I'm going to give to that guy used to be $1 million a sack, but gosh, he is so good and he is such a problem and he can create so many difficulties for an opposing offense and ruin the rhythm and force turnovers and allow my defensive backs to cover better. That's worth about a guy like that. His number is, we're going to creep up to eventually $3 million a sack for a guy like Nick Bosa. And it is a thing of beauty watching him set his moves up. And then sometimes being like, I'm not a finesse player on this down. I am just going to blast through your face, and I'm going to toss a 330-pound man ass over tea kettles.
Of course, the MMA fighter loves the guy that bull rushes people. But, yeah, I mean, especially because of all the rule changes where you can barely hit a quarterback and DBs can't touch wide receivers because the NFL wants to make money and they know touchdowns make fantasy numbers and all that stuff. Edge rusher becomes that much more important. But yeah, I mean, that's crazy that his numbers are like that and that they're submitting video footage saying how many holding calls he's not getting. And if I'm Bosa's agent, I'm not only factoring in sack numbers, I'm sure they already do this, but I'm putting in pressures and holding penalties drawn or whatever to show like, look, it's not my fault. Like I was saying about Chandler Jones, not comparing the two, but you can't hold it against him if he was going to get a sack, but the guy held the crap out of him.
I mean, by all means, if you're someone who's watching the film on Bosa and you're talking about what kind of a disruptor he is, sacks are a stat that matter most, and pressures are probably the stat that matters second most, and his tackles and tackles for loss in run support are probably the thing that matters third most. And then it's holding penalties drawn, and it's percentage of plays where the man assigned to block him is assigned help, okay? If you're watching film and his agent and everyone associated with him should be, and the coaching staff included, should be saying, all right, how many times does that team chip a tight end or chip him with a tight end? How many times does that guy send the running back across the face of the formation to try and help out the tackle who's assigned to him? How many times when we run him on a stunt and he loops around is the guard that he gets passed off to now given help from the center or whatever? Like, you have to account for how many times he has taken away a whole extra person from an NFL blocking scheme because of how talented he is. You got to take all of that into account to really appreciate how disruptive he is. And there's only a few in the league that are like him.
For sure. He's, if he's not the best, he's top 3 or whatever. I mean, yeah, you can see in the money. I think Aaron Donald became the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of the NFL. But let's go rapid fire. I know you got to go. So I'm just going to ask you one obscure question from every game. So, let's stick with the Niners-Panthers game real quick.
This is going to go really well.
Hate to love, like you hate the guy, but you also, part of you kind of loves it. Baker Mayfield, I think his career is over, and I hate the guy mainly, but I do miss his stupid insurance commercials every Sunday. He's going to have a future in broadcasting. The guy's got a personality, and it's not one that I like, but it's going to be one that draws ratings. And I miss his commercials. Those were some good damn Cleveland Brown insurance commercials where his house was the stadium. That was good.
I liked them. That was a great commercial campaign. Baker Mayfield is the perfect example of a guy who's a great college football player, right? Who develops this sense of untouchable confidence and bravado, rivaling yours almost, right? Like, and then you get to a place, and we know
but
people
isn't warranted.
Exactly like yours.
No.
He gets to a place, right, in the world where, look, in high school, I didn't watch his high school tape, but I'm assuming in high school, he was unequivocally the man.
Yeah, he was the man in college, too.
In college, he was unequivocally the man. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He's the guy who's like, hey, are you going to draft me or what? Let's ride. Let's go, Cleveland. Let's make this happen, right? I love all of that stuff. I love that bravado. But the NFL is the ultimate crucible to filter all of that falsity out of the bravado. It's like you could be the most confident dude in the world. If you don't have the ability, at the end of the day, the NFL is going to show the world that. And Baker Mayfield thinks he's that dude, has thought he was that dude, had convinced other people he was that dude. But at the end of the day, he's just not that dude.
All right, let's move on to this. Shockingly, the 3-1 Giants, I don't think that's going to uphold. Face the 3-1 Packers. I don't really care about the game so much as I want to ask you, it's in London. It's at 6:30 a.m. sharp if you're in California. Number one, do you think that the popularity of football is legitimately growing? Because I can't tell. I mean, the NFL could have been giving out these tickets for free. Now, the place was packed, and there was all different kinds of jerseys. But who knows what's going on behind closed doors? I find it hard to believe, unless it was really cheap, that, but I guess that's why I'm asking you. Number one, do you think it's starting to take off there? And number two, do you think, like it's been rumored for years, that the NFL will eventually have a team there?
Now, logistically, it's just going to be too problematic, expensive, and players are going to bitch too much about.
What, you go from London to California, and then you got to fly back home?
That's what I'm saying. You're gonna have to, like, if you have a team in London, you're gonna have everyone who plays there on a road game is gonna have to be automatically given a bye week the next week to account for all the jet lag and the rest and whatnot. I was in London this past summer, and legitimately the NFL is growing popular, a lot more popular there than it used to be, and it makes sense, right? We're now in a global sports community where European soccer is more popular in the United States than it's ever been, because it's more accessible than it's ever been, because the storylines filter across the pond more than they've ever done. F1, right, is a lot more popular in the United States than it's ever been because of accessory programming. They have a lot of that over there in England for the NFL. Like they've done, I mean, this is arguably like one of the top 5 most successful brands in the history of planet Earth, NFL, right? Building themselves, marketing themselves, creating an absolute year-round calendar of exposure and revenue around themselves. And they're so good at what they do that they have found a foothold in a place where nobody is raised on that sport. That's what's so impressive about this. Like European soccer being more popular in the United States and Major League Soccer being more popular in the United States, that's cool, but it's kind of intuitive. You and I I'm not a soccer guy. You're not a soccer guy, but I'm sure both of us, I know I did. I'm sure even you at some point in your childhood played on a peewee soccer team, right? Nobody in England, zero, none of these people grow up playing gridiron, as they call it, American football, not one of them. And yet the NFL has still marketed their way into at least a niche audience, and it's very impressive.
Yeah, I played soccer until I was like 13. One of my favorite stories is I cared so little about soccer that I forgot all my equipment when it was like a Northern California championship game. And me and my dad didn't care about soccer, but I was good. Because I was left-footed, so I played forward. But so my dad ran to the store to buy me cleats, and he bought me cleats that were like 4 feet too tall, and it was like, I mean, too big, and it was kind of raining, so it was muddy, so they slipped off like 1,000 times. I scored 3 goals in the first half, and we won. And I didn't even attend. They had like a pizza party championship ceremony. Me and my dad didn't even go. Soccer is the worst. The only reason why, you know what soccer is good for? No offense to all the soccer. Once again, I'm gonna get lit up for this. Soccer is great. The reason why I kept playing it as long as I did, by the way, stopped playing because I got hit in the nuts with a ball in practice, walked off the practice, never played again. I was out. Anyways, here's what it's good for, OC. Conditioning for the sports that I actually liked. You know how much in better shape I was than other guys in basketball and like baseball and like the very little that I played in football? All you do in soccer is run.
Yeah.
It's basically 3 hours of being on the treadmill.
Yeah, you run around a lot in soccer. It's like high-level soccer players, it's like 6 miles a game or something crazy.
Yeah. Well, for those that don't know, plug your show that you're about to do here in a little bit. What is it?
Pac-12 Today, man. Sirius XM, channel 373.
Which leads me to my next question, because you're the college guy. Kenny Pickett. He's going to make his debut. He came in at halftime last week. I think he threw 3 picks, but 2 of those were not his fault. They were tip balls. But what did you think of him coming out of college and going into the draft? I mean, what a hell of a way. Here, kid, go play in Buffalo against a team that's favored to win the Super Bowl. But what did you think about him coming out of college?
I didn't understand the hype the way a lot of people like pushed it for Kenny Pickett. I know that a bunch of the storyline became about his teeny tiny hands at the combine. That's really neither here nor there. Okay, if we go back through the annals of football, NFL football, I'm sure we could find starting quarterbacks that didn't have monster hands. But I've always been, full disclosure, I was not impressed with Josh Allen, and I watched him a lot in college. At the University of Wyoming, he was just like, okay, so he's a big, strong dude. Like, he wins 6 or 7 games a year at Wyoming. He's not even playing the best competition. How's that going to translate into the NFL? So he was playing better competition, Kenny was. And I think what people are most impressed with is just his efficiency with the football and his reliability and consistency as a quarterback. Not like this big, sexy, oh my gosh, he's a different animal. He's somebody that a physical form we've never seen before, anything like that. So I was probably underwhelmed by Kenny Pickett's college career relative to his draft position, but he's got an opportunity. Late action against the Buffalo Bills is not the opportunity you want in your first NFL appearance, but he's got an opportunity, I think, with a fan base and a franchise that's been as stable and consistent as any other. I mean, they've had 4 head coaches in the history of the entire franchise, right? That Pittsburgh is the picture of stability. So I think he's going to be given a chance to grow. And I was so wrong about Josh Allen that I'm not going to make any kind of declaration about young quarterbacks until they're at least a year into actually playing.
Now, for the next game, I just want to add, because I think this, and really for the Silver and Zach podcast, for the Raider Nation out there, I think this is going to go a long way in determining how the outcomes of the games that they play them and the division itself. But the Chargers, I just want to ask you, in all your fighting, I know you've had tons of injuries. Did you ever have a fractured rib cartilage? And they're saying it's getting better. Is that something that can heal while he still plays? Because he played as they beat the Texans last Sunday.
I actually had this exact injury as a high school senior, and it sucks. It hurts, man. And it was friendly fire in my case. A big old 300-pound from our own team landed on me and popped my rib cartilage. It's a pain management injury, which is why Justin Herbert is going to try and play through it, right? Once the injury happens, it's very difficult to make it worse. They're going to pad him up, they're going to protect him, and he's going to probably take the pain-killing shots and all that kind of stuff.
But does it heal?
Yeah, it's just a slow healing, slow-moving process. And
it hurts like a mofo in the process. It
hurts, man. And it's just the option for him and for this franchise right now is if you wait till it's truly healed, you've sacrificed half of your football season. And I don't think it's something that becomes a persistent problem for him and like a long-term career-affecting injury if he decides to play through it. That's why he's doing it.
But will it heal as he's playing through it?
I don't know how, because he's going to keep getting hit. It's not like opposing players are going to be like, I'll just trip him. I'll just take out his legs and not land on him, right? So they're obviously going to give him that like flak jacket and stuff like that, but I don't understand how it's going to truly heal through this process.
So he's going to deal with it all year long, and by your guess, what percentage worse is he because he's dealing with it? In other words, is his play going to be, other than him being in a ton of pain, is it going to affect his productivity on the field?
Well, that's actually a really interesting question, because if you go all the way back to when the injury happened, right? He was like, it looked like he was shot. Somebody was like, he could barely, he was like,
it looked terrible.
There was that third down. I think it was the third down where he pulled the ball down and he could have scrambled for the first down, but instead he threw it away. There was green grass in front of him. He threw it away because he was in so much pain. He didn't want to run even unencumbered. He wasn't even going to get tackled. He didn't want to run and slide. That's how much pain he was in, right? And then the very next down, the exact sequential play right after, he drops back and delivers a beautiful ball. His best pass, just the best pass of the game, right? And those two things should not have happened from the same guy 30 seconds apart.
Yeah.
But so, like, if I watch play one, I say, oh, absolutely, this is going to affect the way that he plays.
Yeah, by the way, he didn't even have to slide. All he had to do was, there was nobody near him, and he just threw the ball.
I know. He could have just, like, limped his way out of bounds probably, and he would have had the first down. So if I watch play one in that scenario, I'm saying, yeah, absolutely, this is going to affect him. The pain management's going to be a problem. He's not going to play anywhere near to his potential. But then if I watch play two right after that, I'm going to say won't affect him at all, because look what he's capable of doing even when he's in severe pain. So you tell me, is it going to affect him or not?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never dealt with it. I'm just curious. I wonder if it's just something where it's just going to hurt like a mofo, but he's going to play the same, or, it's going to be something where his production is going to drop drastically. All right, next game. Simple question here, and we can move on real quick. Kirk Cousins. What the bleep? That is the quarterback that I have the least amount of an opinion on, other than to tell you that that phrase, there's only one rule, there are no rules. That's how I feel about Kirk Cousins. The only opinion I have on him is that I have no opinion on him. None. I have no idea what to do with that guy. 3-1. They seem to always be 3-1, though.
It's a hell of a take. Kirk Cousins is a 34-year-old Jimmy Garoppolo. You're not going to get anywhere great with him. He's going to win you some football games. He's going to teach you to mitigate your expectations, because you're going to believe he's going to start 3-1. He's going to end up, maybe end up 6-3 at some point in the season. You'd be like, hey, we could win this division. This guy's legit. You know what I mean? He could take us a nice deep run. And then he's going to throw 3 picks in a game and fumble a ball out of the back of the end zone. And you're like, oh, never mind. He's not that guy. I'm glad we gave him a fully guaranteed contract. Like this, Kirk Cousins is the exact example of why quarterback development in college football and high school football and little league football is a booming industry, because a guy who has no business being the face of a franchise gets like an $80 million guaranteed contract because he's pretty decent at the position. So every dad and every mom who's got a kid with an arm are just like, yep, we're going to hire a private coach. We're going to get him a scholarship. We're going to get this guy drafted. And even if he only goes 500 for his NFL career, he's going to be generationally wealthy. Like, he's just not that great.
I know. But he's just good enough. He does just good enough in terms of record. And then more importantly, he has moments or games that stand out that are at the forefront of contract decision makers' minds when they do it. I mean, it's just, but I would never, I wouldn't want him as my franchise QB, and I damn sure wouldn't be paying him the money that they do. All right, let's move on. The Patriots, everybody talked about, was it Brady or Belichick? It's looking a lot like it's Brady. Now, Brady went into a very nice situation down in Tampa and has a ton of talent around him. But the Patriots just seem to be in shambles. A lot of people are making a big, you-know-what about, having a defensive coordinator as your offensive coordinator and who's calling the plays. But what do you make about what's going on in New England? And in terms of the Lions, you can answer this one first and then get to the Patriot stuff. Is Dan Campbell a clown?
Why are you calling Dan Campbell a clown?
I just feel like he's like a cartoon character. I feel like he's a lion in a circus that came to life. Lions
and circuses are alive.
No, I mean became a human lion. But I don't know how good of a coach he is. I think he's a good motivator, and maybe it's the talent, but I don't know how intelligent he is when it comes to managing a football team. Put it like that. I'd love to have him as like a defensive coordinator, but head coach, I don't know.
Well, that's what happens, right? You get these guys who are first-time head coaches, and we find out one way or another whether that's a position they should ever hold.
Mostly they fail.
A lot of times they do, right? But writing the script on him at this point in a season with the lack of talent on that roster and with injuries to, some of your best players, that's a silly thing to do. Calling him a human cartoon lion is absolutely spectacular, and I wish it would have made it onto Hard Knocks, but
I'm just saying, should they be at some point? You cannot be losing games at home to the Seahawks 48-45. You can't be losing. You can't be losing like they lost to the Vikings 28-14. They lost to the Eagles 38-35. Those are all close games, and some of that has to be coaching, in-game coaching, right?
Well, the flip side of that is, it was not so long ago that this was a Lions franchise that went 0-16 and was arguably the worst football team in the history of the league, right? Yeah. And now they're competing. Now they're close. Now you can make an argument that you're, one score away. This is why in the college ranks, this is why Scott Frost at Nebraska, the hometown boy who came home to coach his alma mater, this is why he stuck around for as long as he did, but ultimately why the frustrations were so great. He lost like 9 of 10 one-score games that his team was involved in, right? So being tantalizingly close, at some point, you can't say, hey, we're making progress unless you make the next play and you win a game like that. But this is a rebuild for the Lions, and to pretend that that's anything else and to expect that 4 games in, this guy should have answers and that you should be winning 48-45 against Pete Carroll, like, come on.
All right, fair enough. Give me your thoughts on the Pats.
They're going to start Zappy. QB.
Hey, Team Z names. Team Z names.
What do you want me to tell you about the Patriots, man? Like
nothing. But at some point, Bill's going to have to. I know he took Mac in the first round. I was surprised by that. Normally, he's like, I don't care who's out there. But it's not looking. He's going to have to figure something out because I know they made the playoffs last year, but I thought that was kind of a fluke. And then, Mac Jones being hurt doesn't help. But I don't know. I think things look
you're telling me that the fact that Bill Belichick can't win NFL football games with Brian Hoyer or Bailey Zappi means that he was a fraud the whole time that Tom Brady.
No. I'm not going that far. I'm just saying it looks bad.
Yeah,
all right.
It does look
move
bad.
On.
There are very few teams in the NFL that can survive an injury to their starting quarterback, their franchise player, and look great.
I agree. All right, Falcons at Buccaneers. The line is 10. Don't really want to talk about the game. How about Brady and Giselle getting divorced?
That's sad, man.
Isn't it?
This they were the closest thing we had to American royalty. I know she's Brazilian, but
No, I totally agree. And it seems like everything was going smooth. This is literally over football.
Yeah, no,
it's because Tom wants to play football, and that's the reason why he chose the NFL over his wife.
And that sucks, right? And ultimately, when Brady retired and then unretired 4 months later, I was like, this is before we knew anything about what it was going to do to their marriage and whether or not they were going to be good. I was like, this is a bad move. The unretirement is never good for somebody's legacy, especially someone like him who was cemented. The Mount Rushmore of NFL football is carved, and he is the first face you put on it. He is the best quarterback to ever do it, the winningest guy, right? And it was like, dude, why are you doing this? And what we're going to find out, they're going to do like what was the Michael Jordan documentary? The
30 for 30?
The Last Dance.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to do that. I know they're already doing one for Brady, but they're going to do another one in 10 years. And we're going to learn about like how he is truly mentally an addict to the feeling he gets from football, to the validation, the success, the pursuit of greatness, whatever it is. Like this, the fact that you choose football over ultimately your family is not something that we're going to celebrate about Tom Brady, because he's like, let me ask you this. All right. We'll close on this because I got to go. If we put it on the poll, what would you rather have? A happy marriage to Gisele Bündchen, Victoria's Secret angel, stable home with your 3 lovely children together, right? They got 3 kids. Or a Super Bowl ring? What's the answer for most people?
It would take me a second, but yeah, I'd take the first one. But especially, I mean, in this scenario, it's not even a Super Bowl ring. It's an 8th, like you already have 7. So you can add that to the first part of the question. You could say, married to a Victoria's Secret supermodel, lovely home, happy home with your 3 kids, 7 Super Bowl rings. And then the second one, well, this will really make the poll go one way. But the second one can just be, or an 8th ring.
You know what? Statistically, if we take every man on planet Earth, right, and we run the probabilities of that person's life, the chance of that man winning a Super Bowl ring is probably 1 in 3.5 billion. The fact that the probability of that man marrying a Victoria's Secret angel, even longer odds. There's more Super Bowl rings out there than there are Victoria's Secret angels that you can marry.
That's true. That's very true. All right, we're going to end on this for real. Just 1-word answers. I just want to know who you got. Cowboys, Rams.
Rams.
Are the Eagles a legit Super Bowl contender?
Yes, Jalen Hurts.
Bengals or Ravens? Those are 3 good games.
My fantasy team needs it to be the Bengals, but Lamar, man, it's Ravens.
In Baltimore.
It's Ravens.
That's going to be a hell of a Sunday night game. And then we have the Raiders on Monday night. All right, OC, thank you for joining me. Follow him on Twitter at RealOCSports. I'm at Zak Sports, ZAK Sports. Until next week, it's been the Silver and Zach cast with Zachariah and Sean O'Connell. Peace out, Pittman.
Bye.